Hello, my name is JoAnn Almonte with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Today I am going to be interviewing with
Ray Arcenas, also with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Today is July 11th, 2023, and we are at the Pensacola Public Library. Could you begin by giving your name, spelling it out, and introducing yourself?
Okay. Hello, my name is Indigo Lett, so it's Indigo and then Lett.
Of course. When and where were you born?
Okay, so I was born in was it Huntsville, Alabama, in 1985. I think it was it, right? Yeah.
What were your parents doing?
So both my parents were actually going to not UAB. Was it Alabama A&T? They both were actually college students at the time that I was born. So my mom was, I think they're both juniors. Because I think, Alabama A&T was in Huntsville. So, they were both going there at the time. So.
Oh, what did they do when they graduated?
So I don't know about my dad so much because he's kind of out the picture, my biological one. But my mom, she works as a office manager at what's the place called? My mom's gonna hate me. It's a place that helps take care of like special needs people, and I cannot remember the place what it's called right now. I'm so sorry, but like. She just basically just works with them, and then I'll just make sure the schedule and everything is going well and all that. But that's her job. So,
did you have any siblings growing up?
No, I'm actually an only child. So no, it's a rare like. And everybody's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it was just lonely. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean it was I liked it. But obviously, it would be great to have a sibling because I kind of envied my friends sometimes with that. But at the same time, like hearing them go like, I hate my sister, I hate my brother, and they want to like throw them somewhere. I'm like, oh, okay, well maybe not. So, but yeah, I'm only child.
Right.
All right, and what was your childhood like? Did you grow up in Huntsville, Alabama?
No, so originally we were here in Pensacola for like two years, the first 2 years. And then we moved to Fort Worth, Texas. So yeah, so we have family in Texas. So that was the reason. I think my mom was kind of tired of my grandma at the time because we were living with my grandma all the time, and they're like deuces. So and then they just went to Texas, and we lived there until like I was 12. And then we came back here since, so like 1997, 8, and then we came back here. And I've we're here in Pensacola for a bit, and now we're living a little bit in Cantonment, so it's like north of Pensacola a little bit. So.
All right, why did you guys come back to Pensacola?
I think just because I think my mom was, from what she was saying, it was just the family. It's just like my mom's side of the family is mainly from here, and I think she just felt like the comeback here. I'm not entirely sure. Like I liked Texas at the time because it was. I mean, obviously with the situation politically now, no, but like even here now. But like that's another story. But like at the time when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's big spaces. You're playing around, all these, and the weather changes too. It actually snowed one year. I was like. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have pictures. They were like, "Why are we throwing snowballs in like Fort Worth in the middle of Texas?" But I mean, we get hailstorms and huge, and then thunderstorms and stuff. But like, it was nice. And so I, as a kid, you're like, I don't want to do that. But like, yeah, I think we just came back. So yeah.
So what was it like moving around a lot as a kid?
Yeah, so I think moving around, just a lot of the changes because you had friends and now they're gone, and this is pre-social media. So like once they're gone, they're gone. Like I'm not saying you can't like get back to them later, but like you kind of forget. You're like, oh, I remember that person, I remember that. And so, often, wish to, see people again that you've seen, you were friends with when you're younger. But, like back then it was like, I'm just going to have to mail you a letter or something. Because now, you can get on different social medias. But back then it was just like, bye. I can't see, So that was the thing, I think, as a kid, trying to get acclimated to these places. And it was just, a bit difficult at times, but, I got used to it. So.
Right. So I mean, maybe this list might be too large, but what was your education like? Your elementary, middle school, high school?
Oh man. Okay. So elementary, I went to a private school. So it was called Como Montessori Magnet. That school was similar to, I think I want to say Brown Barge. I don't know if y'all, I don't think y'all know Brown Barge. So that's where y'all from your games. Okay. So Brown Barge is kind of like a magnet private school system. And so I don't know if there's something like that in Gainesville, but like it's these schools that like the classes were like, they were kindergarten and there was like first through third grade and then fourth through sixth. So first and third were all together and fourth through sixth was all together. And so we kind of learned from each other and, you did like that. And then that was nice because we did a lot of field trips. We went to like the opera, we saw different things. And that kind of opened my mind up to different, spaces that, I think, unfortunately, the public school kids don't get those types of field trips where you get to see different people and talk with them. And then when we got here with the Brentwood Middle School, which is more of a public school, and that experience was it wasn't a culture shock, but it was definitely a difference between not going to different places and doing things to like, you may get one field trip a year, you may get like, and then, the middle school dynamic. So then you have like kind of this weird TV show thing that happen where there's like, now what drama is and people are getting into different things. You're like, what is happening? And then high school I went to, and that was fun. Middle school was fun. But then high school, I went to Woodham High School, which is another public school. It's now gone, actually. 2004 it left because of Ivan. Ivan in 2003? Yeah, Ivan happened in 2005. No, Ivan happened in 2005. Hurricane Ivan, I'm sorry. And then, but now it's replaced with West Florida Tech or something. So, but yeah, that was a good experience. I played sports and stuff, and it was an experience trying to like the high school experience. And that was the onset of, I think, the beginning of understanding queerness and understanding my transness at that point, because it was like just trying to, and this is like the early 2000s, so this is a very different time. But I basically hit a lot of that because I was like, I don't know how to navigate this because I don't have anybody to navigate. And at that time, it was like you had like movies that were very insultive to the community, like I know The Crying Game was one of them. That you had like all this Jerry Springer show and the Maury and all that. So we didn't really have really great examples. So it was just like, I'm just gonna go to college and figure something out later. So yeah.
And were there any particular formative experiences during this time that were stand out to you looking back?
What do you mean, like formative? Like just
in terms of whether it be like your identity growing up, things that shaped you to who you are that stand out to you?
Oh, okay. So, trying to think. Wow, that's a big question because there's so many. I guess when I was younger, it was like looking up to like the U.S. women's national team when I was younger, because I was like, I'm an athletic person, so I was like looking towards them when they were winning their World Cup at the time, '99, and then just at the same time too, like trying to think of other people and aspects, but just trying to think, like some of my friends when I was younger, they were aspirational. I don't think we even communicate now, but like they were really a lot of the skateboard community at the time. I was skateboarding in high school. I longboard now, but like it was just this open expression of like getting into different subcultures, getting into different music too, because at the time I was just listening to hip hop and R&B, and while I love it, it was a good avenue to like punk music. It was a good avenue to like EDM music as well. Like now I love, trance and techno music, but back then it was like, oh, and then branching out racially as well in that aspect because, not to say we were not in different other music genres. It was just at the time, it was like, if you're black, you're in this box and you're white and you're in this box. And now I'm loving the new generations because they're just everything and everything. But back then it was very like, you're over here. And so going to different genres and having that eye-opening experience of listening to the different music and hearing different people talk about their experiences was, I think, the better part of the formative years when I was in high school. So.
All right, and you mentioned when you went to college, there was a lot more to learn about expression. Could you tell us about that? What college did you go to?
Oh yeah. So there was two colleges, well, three, but PSC was the first one. So that was originally, this is how old I am. There was the Pensacola Junior College. Then they turned into Pensacola State College, but it was a 2-year school. I went through that, but then I went to Florida International University in Miami, and so I really, it makes me sad because I wish I could have stayed there. We just didn't have enough money, and so I was there for 1 year, and it was just amazing. I stayed in the dorm, and that was the first time away from my parents and away from it was just such a, like, I had the freedom of just going to different places and stuff. And so with that school, it was, I was taking international relations at the time. So for me, I got my degree here at UWF for international studies, but they had the school, it was for that. Like part of it, like it was like I think one of the top majors was international relations. So it was just amazing I was at 22 years old. I was really trying to figure out myself there as well as like learning how to like manage myself without parental guidance. And it was just kind of amazing to travel and see downtown Miami and see different parts of it. And then when I came back here, I think I was depressed because I left and I came back here to UWF. Not to say UWF's bad, University of West Florida is bad, but it was just like, you felt like, man, I really wanted to do something there. And so when I came back here, that's when I had started to figure out my queerness at that time, because it was just like I had started to look up YouTube videos about like transitioning and things. And so once you start getting on that down, like you're not looking up that stuff. Even if you're just gay or straight, gay or like bi, once you start looking up things, you probably are, there's like a 90-something% chance you're already. And so I was like, okay, I've got to start to like find some help. And so luckily we did have the Counseling Wellness Center. And so I had started talking to some of the counselors there, and then we started doing therapy sessions and things like that. We had like a group therapy session at one point where there was like a few queer and trans people. And then after that, we had finally, I had started doing just solo sessions, one of the therapists. And it was, it was amazing to like, just to figure myself out more. And then we got the endocrinologist, and then we just started the ball rolling after that. And so it really helped me to like have that avenue to be able to have the college there to help me express myself more. So
yeah, and sorry, if you don't mind me asking, what do you identify as?
So non-binary. Yeah. So non-binary, asexual, and then like it's called what is it called with the aromantic? It's nebula aromantic, whatever. It's aromantic, so ace, arrow, and non-binary. Yeah, and I just go by they them pronouns. So yeah.
All right, and you said you were born at like the mid '80s. So what was it like growing up as a queer person in like the tail end of the 20th century and then into the 21st century?
The way you said that sounded kind of epic. What happened when you lived in the? I was like, oh my god, like so I, like growing up in the in the '90s, people like to eulogize about it, but it wasn't as like glam, like because like at the time there wasn't because like I was saying before, there was just not the best examples of like queer and straight, queer and trans people. And so growing up, like I had started to like look up to like different people like Tyra Banks and a bunch of other ones when I was younger. And so a lot of people I know, like Janet Mock, who's a prominent trans person, looked up to like Whitney Houston and other people like that. And it was just trying to find the little spaces of people who you can identify with at the time, because it was just there was no, it was like such a limited representation at the time that you really, it was really hard to like figure out like who you were. And then all you could do is either try to like maybe find an article of clothing or something like that that make you feel like more of yourself. And then in the early 2000s, it was kind of the same. They started to like, I would say at the time, because of like Ellen and because of others, like gay and lesbian started to be more, but like trans is still was like, and even now, like obviously with our laws here, but like even now, even back then, it was still kind of a bridge too far of understanding. And that was, I understood that in a sense because I was like, okay, you know, being gay or being lesbian, you can kind of explain that. Like they like, you know, same gender person or whatever. But like trans is like, you're changing the whole, like, and I could see somebody going like, I don't. So, but at the same time, you really want it to be accepted. You really want it to like be, you know, not discriminated against or anything. So it was really tough, and a lot of it was hiding who I was for a long period of time, and just especially with the ACE stuff, because you know you're in locker rooms with, I hate this to say, I'm gonna, I don't know how the camera's gonna, but you're in a locker room with guys. They say stuff that is terribly misogynistic. Also, you know, people talk about sex and stuff, and you're just like, this ain't me. I ain't that. I'm not doing that. You know? So you try to like, you know, then you try to like blend in, but it's hard to blend in because you try to be honest with yourself. And so it's this kind of balancing act of trying to like, try to be a part of the friend group, but at the same time, you're trying to be yourself. And so I think from the 90s and 2000s, it was kind of difficult to like do that. So, yeah.
All right. And when you were younger, did you know, like, have any inclination that you were queer? Or at what point did you realize, oh, yeah, this is me?
Yeah. I want to say, I want to say like 5 or 6, but like I didn't know what it was called. Like I just was like, oh, I just, you know, at first I thought I was like gay, so I was like, oh, I like guys, but I'm like, no. So I was like, no. But like I just knew I was something different, and I just didn't know what it was, and so, you know, we had to. I'm trying to think. I just had to like just go through life kind of, and this is also being like autistic as well, neurodiverse, because it's like on the same token you're like trying to like mask a lot of the stuff you're going through, and so you as a kid you just don't know. You're just like, oh well, I got something, but I can't go to anybody because you're going to be looked at as whatever they would call you. So yeah, it was difficult to kind of go through that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you also mentioned being part of like a skateboarding community. So what other subcultures were you involved with? Were you part of any organizations related to neurodivergency or queerness?
Yeah, so right now, actually, I'm a part of Strive, so it's a socialist trans initiative. So we actually are a transgender activist organization. So what we do here in Pensacola is we're not a 501c3, so we are we're a group that just takes donations from the people, and what those donations go to is like HRT. It goes to like transportation, clothing. We just had a clothing drive like a week ago at a bar, so it was kind of, and we're all on different social medias and stuff like that. If y'all want to follow us, I just but like just I try to promote as much as we can because like it's kind of hard out here. Like, but yeah, so it's me and 3 other people, and we're just we have meetings at a local restaurant here, and it's been amazing to join that group because when I came back from FIU, that's what I had joined that group from then, and it was just been so accepting at that point to meet different people from the community. Because at the time when I was at UWF, there was a gay straight alliance at the time, and so I joined that group, and it helped me to understand more of myself of being non-binary, because what I didn't know is I thought for whatever reason you couldn't take HRT and be non-binary, but you can, obviously. And so that was the thing. And I was like, oh, okay, now and so, like going through that group, and then I wasn't a part of the original Strive organization, but I had joined like after the original people had left. Just because they were older and they were a little, they got tired. And a lot of them were disabled as well. So it was just like a transition. So, but now we're really doing well. For the most part, obviously we're still a younger organization compared to others, but that had really helped me to, be more speaking and doing stuff, and also just being more part of the community and helping out the younger generation as well. And that's been great.
And did you ever look into like queer history, so like the Stonewall Riot, anything about queerness in other countries and cultures?
Oh yeah, so usually I sometimes do like a YouTube or like so sometimes I do like a YouTube or like we usually do like sometimes we have like a transgender remembrance and stuff like that. So we often talk about the Stonewall riots, and we often talk about who was there and who, and how much Silver Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson had their influence, as well as the other lesbians and lesbian, gay, and bisexuals that were there as well, and other just queer people as well, and their impact. Also the Compton cafeteria riots. Also, just historical trans people throughout the history, and then we also talk about like I forgot how you say it, but the in Mexico the mujer, I forgot. They're like a third gender. You have India, who has like Hydra. I think they're a third gender. I think there's some in Philippines as well, and Southeast Asia. Africa, there's a few, but that was a trickier situation just because they're with how that's been done within, I was just gonna say imperialism, but like it's just done with how Christianity is kind of. But and then here we have indigenous people with Two-Spirit. So there's a lot of, when we try to tell people about, because people think it's just a new thing, and I'm like, it's not new. We've been here for like centuries, and so it's just good to tell people about the other places as well, because then they can understand that we're everywhere, and all of us going through different experiences and different strifes, but it's something that I think that just needs to be told. So yeah.
So growing up, did you ever experience any discrimination related to your queerness or even race?
Yeah, both. More on the racial side, because I was hiding the queer side a bit more. I think the queer side was more in the beginning with my parents, and so trying to navigate that aspect, because I think they knew, but they were like, we're trying to like block you from, in a sense, because we can kind of see it, but we don't want that life for you, in a sense, because we know what that comes with it, or when we think we know what comes with it. But on the racial angle, yeah, most definitely. There's been, there was in the 90s was a different time, because there was a lot more people saying things just blatantly and not being challenged on it compared to now. And I'm so proud of the generations now. Like, I'm a millennial, but like, I'm so proud of like Gen Z, and like, I'm an elder, but I'm so proud of like the generations now, and like Gen Z and A, like, who are coming out and go like, no, we're, it's okay to be sensitive. It's okay to like have that feeling and being like, oh, I feel like this is insulting. Let me say something. Because prior to that, a lot of us were, especially when you join different subgroups, and they, you're around just mostly white people, and they'll say something, and you're just trying to keep friends with them because this is a new subgroup, and I don't have many people, friends in the skateboard or video game or whatever communities you're in. You don't have, like, this is the only friend group you got, and this is, some of it was before social media, so like this is it. Like, you don't, I mean, you could maybe find some other people later on, but like, now there's tons of groups everywhere in that, especially with like anime and stuff like that. So you were just like trying to like keep these friends, and so you often people please or fawn or whatever, to like make sure that you keep these friends, and you just allow things that normally you shouldn't let slip. You should challenge that. And then you can kind of see where your real friends lie in that regard, because then the ones that are real, they'll be like, oh, my bad, I didn't mean that. I'm just trying to joke, but I'm not going to say that anymore. Two people who are like, oh, it's a joke, I'm gonna have to do. And like, okay, maybe I need to stop hanging out with that person because that person's not going to listen to me. So a lot of us back then were, trying to maintain these friendship groups. And so racially, you had to like, and then also just with how being perceived, just in stores and things like that. I've often been followed sometimes, and then also being neurodivergent didn't help either, because when you're autistic or you have ADHD, your mind just wanders somewhere, and you're in a store and they just think you're just trying to do something, but you're like, you're just like, oh, so many clothes or so many whatever, and you're just, and so people mistake your neurodivergency for like a could be criminal situation, but like, so you kind of have to mask and keep it. So there's like double the masking, double the code switching, double the double the no, and so that's a lot of where both the queerness and as I got older, I think the queerness when I started going to work and stuff, that's when I think the queerness started. When I got in my 20s is when the queer discrimination started happening. But it was like more of, it didn't happen to me as much as it was happening around me. So like, I think when you start becoming yourself, you start to hear more conversations about that subject. So like when I used to work at a hotel, and like they would, there'd be somebody who'd be like, oh, hey, here's this video about this person who's a guy with this girl, da, da, da. You'd be like, so I'm kind of that, all right. It's not like, what I'm saying, but you can't say that, because then you're like, and so like, you just get these situations where you're just like having to like either argue and talk, try to argue without like outing yourself, or just like let it go. And so I think racially and queer wise, that's kind of the situation I was in. So sorry for the long-winded.
No, that's great. Going back a little bit, what was the coming out process like for you?
Yeah, so I think, I'm trying to think, with college, so it was during college, so I had gone to therapy and everything, and I had really sat down with myself, and I was like, I'm watching these YouTube videos, I'm in this gay straight line space, and I just know it. I just know that I'm queer and trans. Like, I just know that this is it. And so that it was a hard process, because it was kind of like hiding myself from my parents, and then at the same time just trying to navigate the school life. And so when I came out to my parents, I had written them a letter, because I can write better than I can talk. And I know I didn't see it here, but like, like with them, it's like I can write it better. I can, but they're more, I'm an introvert, but they're more extroverted. So they're mostly like, you need to tell us, da da da. But I'm like, anyway, so when I told them, I was kind of the first time I remember seeing my dad be silent. I've never had him, he's always a talker, he's always somebody, never seen him being that silent. I mean, he went back to my mom, they started talking, and they were, started asking a bunch of questions, and my mom was upset, and it was like, oh, this is not the life. I don't think you should be this, you should be doing this, and this. This is the, kind of the role of your life you should have had, da da da. and it was just kind of hard. It was hard to like go through that. They've gotten better now. They've gotten better, but like at the time, it was just like a very stressful situation with that. And then with my friends at the time, my older friends, it was more shocking because at the time, I think they saw me as one of the more masculine people, and so for me to come out like that, it was it was like, oh, whoa, I didn't, we don't even, this came out of left field for them. Um, and so it was kind of hard with them too. I think they were more accepting. Even with one of my friends, she was like, well, let's just go to the mall. Like, let's go to. And so it was fun. It was fun in that regard because they were really supportive. They were at first, some of them were kind of in the middle, like, I don't know, but like a lot of the friends that a lot of the girls that I knew, they were like, sure, like, okay, well, like, but a lot of the guys, they were just like, let's ask, what happened, what I'm saying, like, because they just didn't see it. So, and so, and then the rest of my family has kind of been a mixed thing with that too, because some of them just think I'm gay, and so they're just like, oh, you're gay, okay, well, all right. And I just, some of them I don't think talk about it. So it's just been kind of this mixed bag all around. So yeah.
You mentioned being in a lot of queer spaces, like in the Gay Straight Alliance. Were those predominantly white spaces? And if so, were there like that same dynamic of being odd about races you encountered in other subcultures?
Yeah. With that group, it was a little different. I would say, yeah, that's a hard one because like it flowed, like the weird demographic flow of it was weird because sometimes it was mostly white and then sometimes it was more diverse. So I think because of the Devin who was running it was very keen on making sure that like and they're white, but they made sure that the group was gonna be more diverse. Now, the previous people, like I think it was more white people and stuff like that. But when Devin came in, I think they tried to make sure that like, hey, we're gonna try to reach out to different groups and see if we can have more of a more diverse group so people can get different perspectives and stuff. So when I got there, it was more diverse. Even though I think it did still tilted to more white, but I really I think my experience is different in that regard. Now, when I did there was this other group called the Gulf Coast Transgender Alliance. That group was mostly white. So like that group was like they come together every once a month at Everman's, which is down the street, which is like a Whole Foods, not Whole Foods, like a healthy food place. And so that group was mostly white, and they're older too. So that's a whole nother dynamic because not only you get they're white, and a lot of them, some of them come from military backgrounds, and then on top of it, they're older. So now you have that dynamic of like a generational gap on top of them not understanding racial experiences. And so, unfortunately, sometimes when you talk with them, they kind of, I'm trying to be kind here, but like they just don't understand. And so, they understand the trans side, they understand the queer side, but and in that even is a little different because some of the languages is different between the generations. But like the racial angles where they just like, how do you not link, how do you not intersect the two? They're both getting discriminated against. How do you not so it's frustrating. But I think because the Gay Straight Alliance was younger and a lot of them, they were Gen Z, so that a lot of them understood more of the racial dynamic, and because they were also discriminated against, they could link it together better. And I was like, and that's why I said I was proud of them because I'm like because when you're back in the '90s and 2000s, like it's just so difficult to get people to understand the racism. It's so hard, and so you had people that didn't want to know, and people who were trying, but they just couldn't get it. But like I would say the millennial Gen Z generation, like we have done really well to like start to like break down those walls of trying to understand racism. And so yeah, I think when my Gay Straight Alliance experience was definitely more welcoming and understanding. So
So moving on from college, you mentioned you worked at a hotel. You also said you majored in international relations at FIU. So
Yeah.
what did you eventually graduate with, and where did you work out of college?
Yeah, so when I graduated, at UWF at 2014. So that was with international studies, and then you said where I worked as well afterwards. Okay, so after that, I had basically just a run of just like minimum wage jobs. So at one point, I was working at Kohl's, I was working at Hampton Inn, which is the hotel, and I was working at two doctors' offices. In the middle of that, though, there was this internship I did with what are they called? Gulf Coast Citizen Diplomacy Council. So what they do, they work at the city hall. Is like when people they'll write little proposals to the State Department, and so most people that come over, most delegates that come over, they have two big cities and one small city that they'll come visit, and this is the small city that we're trying to propose them to come. And usually they'll have like an issue they have, or like a topic they come with, like health, women's rights, or business, or anything like that. And our job was to help them go around the town. They would stay with somebody here and as well. So usually it's here downtown, and then we would like help them go to different places and just meet different people that had to deal with their topic and stuff. So, but for me, I think the international studies major, I really wanted to do that, but like now, I felt like I transitioned over to, funny enough, working in the library. I don't work at this one. I work at another one that's kind of an hour away from, not an hour, about 45 minutes away from here. And I'm really liking the library, so I'm thinking about going back actually to college to get a degree in library science and informational studies. So, because for me, those are the jobs that, just working in the library now at part-time that I'm working in, it's been really different than working at like, especially front desk at like a receptionist job the last one I worked, it was so stressful, having to take all the calls and all that stuff, and then it's just too much. So, but international studies, I really wanted to try to get like a job as maybe like working in the State Department somewhere. I know there was like the exchange department that I wanted to try to work at DC at one point, but it just didn't pan out that way. So, now I'm like trying to just look forward to like working at a library. So, yeah.
Did you get involved in any other advocacy or activist organizations after your college career?
Yeah. I was trying to think. I think the only one was Strive at the time. So, we did work with Dream Defenders for a little bit. They're still here in Pensacola. So, you was the Dream Defenders, and then there is PSL. We worked with a little bit, and then there was the Workers' World Party as well. But like they're kind of smaller groups, and they're here and there. And then there's also DSA. They're around as well. But also another group was Food Not Bombs. So I try to go there every Friday. They're downtown. They help feed the homeless, and so I try working with them. And then also I am part of the 309 Punk board. So that is a board that does. It's actually right down the street, but they do, it's basically like a punk museum almost in a way, like a punk for Pensacola. And so we just basically have different events there. Usually there's artists that come through or musicians that come through. And, we just help them, we house them for like a month. The most of it was a month, sometimes like 2 weeks or something like that. And people come see them and everything. And so I try to branch out a little bit here and there.
Nice. So what led you to join Strive specifically?
Yeah, so I was actually asked because at the time the original board members, they had stepped down, so it was just Devin left, and they were the secretary at the time, and they were just looking for people to join, and they asked me. And at first I didn't want to join, just because I was just like, I don't know, I'm doing activism. I didn't think about it. But like usually I think often when you're queer, trans, you're kind of your own activist in your own way because you kind of have to advocate for yourself a lot of times. So, I decided, I thought about it for a minute and I was like, yeah, I guess I'll join, and I'm glad I did. There's a lot of events we've done, and a lot of things we've done for the community that have helped out so much. And it's just been great.
Could you elaborate on those events you held?
Yeah, so what we've done, some of it's been like protesting, but most of it's been we've done panels. Sometimes we've done panels here, like on just queer trans issues. We do the Transgender Day Remembrance. We've done clothing drives. Trying to think of what else we have. And some of the things we've done are more been like fun events. So we went to the beach one time. We just did this Sunday. We did a stitch type of arts and crafts thing. And so we're trying to diversify the events because we just don't want to be just strictly activism. We want to have people have joy as well and to be able to enjoy themselves. And I'm so glad we finally started Discord because now we got a bunch of people who can start events, on their own now. That's why we really usually had to do the heavy lifting with that. But now people are like, oh, we're gonna go to Blackwater River and do, just hang out there and do that, or we're gonna go, I don't know, to go get something to eat somewhere. And so it's been kind of fun to see us grow in that regard because it's just because we usually would just do we're just doing a panel Trans 101, or we're doing we might have maybe Mike Kimber from Food Not Bombs and we talk with him in an interview, or we may have a therapist to talk with or something like that. There was a panel where we did have a few therapists and they talked about their experiences and things like that, therapists and endocrinologists. And so so we've done a lot of things like that in our early beginnings, but now we're kind of splitting up kind of the informal and the more recreational stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit too, could you talk a bit about the process of getting hormones and how difficult or easy it was to get them?
Yeah, so I think for me it was a bit more difficult. I don't know about now, but actually now it might be more difficult, especially for kids. Anyway, so especially for the youth. Oh my god, yeah. So I was already I was already 18, past 18. So, so for me it was you had to do 3 months of therapy, and then go to the endocrinologist. So even then, that's kind of hard because you may not have the money for therapy, especially a lot of trans people. They don't, we usually come from working class and poor backgrounds. So you don't usually have the, and I was lucky with the therapist at the time because that therapist they had just got their master's degree from UWF and I was actually doing therapy with them at the time. And then they had their own private practice. And so I got lucky with a sliding scale. They had a sliding scale, which was really good at the time, and it would help me tremendously because I wasn't making as much either, even working full time. So, and so for me, it was sort of easier with that. But yeah, I'm trying to think. The medicine at the time, I was taking pills, so they were cheaper. Now I'm taking not needle, but I forget what it's called. But anyway. The vial. So the vial's at least, I think if one's 10, the other one's 50. So now it's a $40 difference. But yeah, so the medicine wasn't that hard to come by, but I don't know about now. But back in the early 2010s, it was it was a bit easier. But yeah, so that was my experience.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit more about in your professional career when you're going from job to job, what it's like being queer and being Black and all the racialized and queer experience and how those played together along with your neurodivergency. So
Yeah.
did you have any intersectional experiences that really stand out to you in your professional career?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some. So I think with because sometimes I know with when I worked at the hotel, somebody noticed that I was autistic. They just felt like, and they're older, so they didn't like know how to like say it like in a way that was like more, I guess, akin to the day's language. But there's been experiences where, like, I know my ADHD got the best of me, and sometimes like I didn't have Adderall back then, or I didn't have medicine back then, so it was just like you would just be doing something, and then you just move to something else, and then like your boss is like, "Wait, you're supposed to be doing that," and so. And then just like being autistic, like in a neurotypical space, it's very you're very much trying to like mask that issue, but like it's hard because you're trying to like organize things in your way, but then they want things organized in their way, and so like what works, they don't accommodate for who you are, and so like you having to like match what they're doing and knowing full well, and that was back then. I just didn't ask for accommodations because you felt like you're gonna get like discriminated against immediately if you didn't ask for accommodations. So I mean now I try to, but back then it was just not asking for accommodations. And then I think on the racial side, because of this, because people think, for whatever reason, they think Black people are lazy. So like you're sitting there thinking, you're trying to do these things, you're trying to like, and you're getting frustrated, but at the same time, people don't think you're doing your job fully. And so you're getting these situations where, especially when I was working at the hotel, where people didn't think things were done, and they were, but I just did them in my way. And so you often get like this kind of like weird like anger towards you because you didn't like do it in the way they wanted to. Also, when I worked at some of the places, some of the receptionist places as well, it was just like so many things to do at once, and when you're the only receptionist, it's a lot to kind of handle at once. And so like I respect those places that have two receptionists because at least they have a partner and somebody can help them. And so when you often have things to do, and then on top of someone brings you something to do, and then you're like, and it's hard to organize that in an entire day. You often just get lost in trying to figure out like how are you going to do, this like this paperwork here, and then I got this I got to make this schedule. I got to call all these people for tomorrow, and da 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 da. And so it just gets to be a lot. And one of the things I did want to try to do, maybe in my head, I was like a goal was like to make like I don't know if it could be a law or something where you have to, as a business, like label out everything that person's got to do. So like that person, when you get the job, this is every single thing you're gonna have to do. So then you won't get anything extra, and if you get anything less, that might be fine. But you won't get anything extra, because what tends to happen in a lot of jobs is they tell you, oh, this is a job description, and then you're doing somebody else's job, you're doing other things you're not supposed to be, what I'm saying? And then they're like, why do you do that? Well, that's not, So I would love it to see if I can make something to where like, hey, this is the things you're supposed to be doing, and that's it. So for an autistic person, like, okay, this is spelled out for me. This is what this says. My bad, I hit the mic, but this is what this says, and then that's it. So yeah, that's kind of my situation with my jobs and stuff.
Yeah, has queerness played any role in your jobs?
Yeah, I think just now the last two jobs I had were fine because they were both at jobs where they were more accepting, but the previous jobs, it was more or less actually was me taking HRT during those times and trying to hide like wearing your shirts, wearing all this stuff, and trying to just kind of hide who I was. And taking that risk of taking HRT in places where I didn't even tell the management or anybody Now, some of the people I worked with figured it out. So I used to work as a shuttle driver, and I would basically help out the breakfast cooks when they needed anything, and they sort of figured it out. Or they were really nice and kind about it, and they were like, I think you're hiding yourself. You're kind of like not, you're not being you in a sense, but they didn't know how to explain that. They were just like, just not being yourself. And so it was really nice, and it was really emotional because it was like, they weren't being mean about it. They were like, we're just seeing you change in a sense. And we want what's best for you and everything. And I know you probably can't tell everybody and everything, but, just continue being you, especially when I left that job, they were like them. And also the, I forgot how you call it, the maintenance manager as well knew. And he was like, wherever you go, like, continue being you. I don't know how to explain it, but it was really cool. Like, some of it, like I said before, like when you start to first come out, you start to get more things about yourself and more stories come out and people start talking about it a lot more around you. And so you kind of have to be more, you have to slightly argue for yourself, but also not out yourself. So like I said before, it was kind of a game to play, unfortunately, of being like, well, all trans people are not like that. Or you almost have to kind of, not lie, but you always have to kind of be like, well, I know some trans people and they're not like that. And you have to kind of speak for yourself. But it's a weird thing to do because it's like, you really want to be like, I'm trans and this is why, but at the same time, you're like, okay, well, all gay people are not like that, or all, queer people are not like that. And it's, it's something that like you have to kind of like manage throughout the days you work. So, yeah.
Have you noticed discourse around queerness and race and neurodivergency shift over the decades? So you mentioned a lot of this generational shift. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Oh my God. I was trying to think because so I would say, okay, so in the 90s, it was more or less like very just straight. Like it was like anything that was queer or trans got like either made fun of or it got vitriol almost in a sense. Cause like, you have, especially here in the South, we have a lot of just people who are religious. And so because of that, they look towards that for the answers to like what's happening around them instead of just talking to people that are, so it's and so for that point, it was kind of hard because it was just like I feel bad for the people that were grown-ups that were queer and trans back then because it was like, and especially because they were going through the AIDS epidemic as well. So you had on top of that, like, discrimination for disease and then through a disease. And then on top of it, you're trying to just live your life in that regard. But, and then racially, it was still, I was a little kid when Rodney King happened, so like that was a huge issue. And the LA riots happened. I was like maybe 7 or 8, something like that. So that was a huge issue, contention. And the 2000s, I forget there was something, but there was Katrina and that racial situation and how that went and how people looked at people from New Orleans, and that was another contention. But I think the first like racial big issue was, I think, Trayvon Martin, what happened with that in Florida. So that was like one of the first times you started, and this is when social media started to grow, and so now you start to see kind of splits between friend groups and like how people really kind of felt about the police and how they felt about Black people and just what that dynamic is. On the queer side, I think it was just more of like this slow growing type of thing. I think I talked about Ellen. I talked about Queer Eye, and talked about people started to get used to like a little bit of but it was more like white gay and white lesbian at the time. So it was like they're okay, but like even in my own community, but still kind of and so it's kind of hard to. I hate to say like you're still kind of behind, but like it's not really behind as much as it's just this like misunderstanding. Um, and so like I think as we got through the 2000s and 2010s, I'm glad there was like a Janet Mox or like a what's her name from Orange is the New Black, but Laverne Cox, yeah. There was others that were coming through, like younger Black trans people that were coming through and like making a name for themselves in some regard because it was like finally you start to see more of us in spaces and doing movies or just being on TV shows, not TV shows, movies and other things, and so that opened up a thing as well. Obviously, there's been a history I think through the '90s as well with I'm trying to think of the show. Oh, I can't remember the show. But there's always been this thing of like, I want to say, yeah, it was Martin. No, I forgot. Martin with Shanae. There was Madeir. There's all these characters that like, they play women and then they kind of make fun of women in that regard, unfortunately. So it's like misogynistic, but then also it's this like pseudo drag thing there. So it's like this weird dynamic through that, and trying to like navigate that and telling people like, hey, like that is something, but that's not all of what the community is. And so it's been this like this slow education process throughout the decades to try to help people to understand like, a different, not just queer people, the queer thing, queer and trans is not just a white thing. And then trying to help people understand that like the history, like you were saying before, of queer people and like trying to make that dynamic because like people just keep thinking it's just a new thing and it's only been here for like 5 years and it's been here longer, and so it's just I think now we're obviously state wise we're not in a good place, but like education wise I think we're in a better place. It's just we need to connect the decades together and just understand like we've been here, so yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned religion. Was your family religious growing up?
Yeah, so they were Baptist, Christian Baptist. So yeah, I think we've always been Christian in that regard. I'm agnostic, so for me, I'm out. But like for for a lot of my family, they're still Christian. Yeah.
Oh, did that affect sort of your coming out experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. So because of just their upbringing and just my upbringing as well in the church and stuff like that, it was um, difficult to come out because it was like this over thing over like religion, and trying to be beholden to a god or something like that, and just like trying to go through that, and then the morality of just because it's a religion and morality situation together, and so they try to put that argument on both queer and trans people when it comes to that, and it's just it doesn't make any sense to me. Like you would think it'd be the other way around. You think they'd be the most welcoming, technically, because of that. Like, oh, you're different. Okay, well, let's bring no. So I think also politically it doesn't help either when you have. Especially the right wing, and how they conduct themselves, but then also some of the liberals as well. Like they're not as strong as you want them to be. Because of that, they're not sticking up for you when you need them to be there. And so and some of them mean well, but it's just like they don't do enough to where you get that protection in your community. So like you often like see people like mean well, but they like their arguments are like they don't combat the transphobia, homophobia in their own homes, and so now you just allow people to just, and that's racism too. You just allow them to just spew this stuff, and like it's not a combative at the dinner table. I'm not saying you have to be like super annoying about it, but like at least let them know what we told you or something when we're not there. So then that helps educate people on things. So. But yeah.
Yeah, and as we get more and more into the modern day, do you have any thoughts on the recent right-wing legislation that's been going through the state?
Oh my god, that should be a whole other hour. Because I feel bad for that senator in Montana, but I can't remember her name. But yeah, so I think it's a state house person in Montana. But yeah, so just I'm trying to think. Florida could be another hour. Jesus. So I guess the legislative part is just it's upsetting because it's like pre-COVID we had made so many steps, maybe not legislatively, but like just in education and like um, how we, um, how we were just like making just the steps towards maybe not liberation so much, but we are just making steps towards understanding. We had just got through the bathroom issue. There were tons of issues with sports is still an issue, even though that can be answered. There was a bunch of like smaller cultural issues that we were just knocking off one by one, and we're trying to get to the economic issues, which was just as important, if not more important. Of like, hey, we need housing, we need healthcare, we need these things, and that makes I feel like both sides uncomfortable because you could talk about this person can swim really good, but that's an issue, okay. But like I'm not saying it's not, but like we still have people message us and Strive like, hey, I'm homeless. I need a place to stay for real quick. And we try to help them find a place. Or, hey, I can't afford my HRT. Can you help me out with that? Or, can you drive me somewhere? Da, da, da. So we have these issues where I'm like, like walkable cities would be great, or like a thing would be great. You know what I'm saying? Like these things would help out so much of just not even the trans and queer community. It would just help out everybody across the board. And so, like, once COVID happened and then we got DeSantis in, like, it just got worse. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it was already bad in Florida before, but at least we could manage it to a certain extent. But now it's just like with the Don't Say Gay bills, with the parental rights bills they went through. I don't know about y'all in Gainesville, but in Pensacola, we had a bunch of book ban issues. So they even banned a book on two gay penguins, like Tango makes two here. Like our city hall, I think it was maybe the only one here. So like I think the only one in the country that had banned that book. So like, so we have problems. Like I went to one of the meetings and it was like 7 hours of fun because we're here talking about 4 books, and one of them being drama, which was done by I think Renee. Her name's hard to pronounce. I'm just gonna call her Renee. Which was just about this girl who's in the drama department, and she's trying to date this person, but you're in drama, so there's gay people in drama, and you're trying to date a person who's gay, and they come out as gay, and you're just like, and I'm just like, and it's a book for teens, and then so it's just this attack on like literature, an attack on things that like growing up I would have loved to have, like would have loved to have a book like drama. I would have loved to have a book called, it's not even just queer books, it was also racial books as well. Like it was just like I forget the one there was one of them it was about race and I couldn't remember, but they're just banning these books, and it's just like these are books that like people, younger people need to read, especially when you're young. I would have loved to have a book that would, hit the experience of a Black woman or hit the experience of a Black young man, or even if they're like Latino or if they're Asian or whatever. I would love to have that so you can like get to know people better through books and stuff like that, and get to read their experiences. So when you see them, you're like, oh, okay, I don't know your experience that well, but I understand like, hey, I can understand a little bit better, I'm saying now. But, because you're doing that, you're keeping people in the dark. And so, and then and I hate the word got destroyed, but the word woke got destroyed. When we were younger, it was a word, in a basic small sense, it was just being socially conscious. That's all it meant. It just meant like, hey, I know my surroundings. My surroundings is this. And now I'm aware of the surroundings. I'm aware of a situation, and now I'm awoken to it. and now I understand. Like a good example of that is like understanding like if somebody is like if somebody's gay, or something like that, and you're just like if you're a straight person and you're like, oh, well, these are the issues they go through, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Like a lot of times people think that the queer and trans community is all together, and it's like that's not true. That's not true. And especially a lot of my community, a lot of the Black community, they think there's just this group together. Like no, racially, it's split apart in a lot of ways. And so when they understand that, they're like, oh, okay. And then they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's the discrimination issues? I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you. And then you go down the line, you're like, whoa, some of these discriminations are the same discriminations I'm going through. And like, oh. And then they start to get it. And they're like, again, you're starting to awaken. You're starting to be awoke to like, hey, we have similar issues. And so now we can fight on those similar issues rather than, being split apart like they want us to be. Because when we're split, they can just dissect you and like pit you against each other. But when you're saying, hey, you have housing problems, I have housing problems too. You have healthcare, I have healthcare too. And then now you can just, go down the line. And so it just makes it much easier to, sorry, I'm long-winded again, but it makes it much easier to like understand each other. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
before we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't covered in this interview that you'd like to talk about?
I'm trying to think. I guess just if nothing really like, I guess cover just to say that like I just think there's still it looks bleak right now, a lot of especially in the state of Florida and especially with the country as a whole when we look at the next election, because I be honest with you, I don't believe in either one of them. I don't. I get as far as you can throw this building. So for me, it's like I just want to say like your political action is bigger than a ballot box. I'm just going to say that. I know people are upset by that, but I'm like, I get the people who don't vote, like nationally, like I get it. So what I will say is, local and state, I understand because it's more connected and you want to do it that way, that's fine. But I totally get the people who are like, I'm not doing it nationally. So what I will say is your political action can be mutual aid. It can be working with your local communities. It could be coaching a team. It could be reading books to people. Whatever you can do to help your community out. If you're a therapist and you just want to go into local communities and be like, hey, I can, help people with their issues and problems. I'm here at this place. Or if you, especially people who like work a lot, if you know how to do like physical therapy, that'd be great. Like walking around on a bus, or whatever, van doing that. Whatever you can do to help your local and communities, please do that. I think that it goes a longer way than I think people think it does. A lot of times tutoring a kid or being there for people, you don't think it does anything, but then that person goes home and really appreciates what you've done. But then also they got help, they were looking towards, maybe unfortunately sometimes people doing dark things to themselves, and like for you to help them gives them that bit of hope that there are people out there looking for them. So like I said, like for me, I think looking beyond election, looking beyond like any sort of thing like that, while I say if you want to do it, that's fine, but like also just look beyond that and work towards liberation in that regard. So I think for me, that's the key. So yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to interview you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
That was nice.